What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'll be your host and producer for the show, Logan Landers, and join me here this afternoon to talk about a very interesting, maybe the most interesting draft prospect we've done so far. Demetrius Smith Jr., linebacker, and you'll learn former quarterback. He's out of South Carolina, representing the Gamecocks in the SEC. And guest today is Brian LaBelle. Brian, how's it going, man? And we were just talking a couple minutes ago pre-show about how this guy and what a journey he's had. Why don't you let the folks know a little bit about him?
Started at Tech as a dual threat quarterback. And then some 5 years later, he's starting for South Carolina as their Mike linebacker. So I don't know how you end up there, but I don't think he'd trade his journey for anything in the world. And a very smart guy, got his degree from Tech. So he knew what he was doing, at least there. He's got a good fallback option. But I think he's pretty good at football, and maybe the football thing might just work out for him. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he's picked the right choice to stick with the game on the gridiron there, and I mean he's had a just an interesting life because he went to Locust Grove High School here in Georgia. Excuse me, he was from Locust Grove. He went to Strong Rock Christian School out there in Locust Grove, and Brian he became the program's first ever Division I athlete to sign with Georgia Tech. So I mean he already made history in high school being the first ever D1 player to go to a big school like that. So already a legend in high school, right? Then he went to Georgia Tech, and he's like, all right, time to learn this triple option. They said, we're kind of going to switch things up here, Demetrius. Sorry about that, buddy. So he's like, all right, no problem. Let me go to Charlotte. All right, let's go to Charlotte. You never hear anything about Charlotte. Let's go to the 49ers. And he did really good work there. First team All AAC instead of ACC at Georgia Tech. Did some good work there, and then he said, all right, let me up my playing level here, and let's go from the ACC to the AAC, now to the SEC in South Carolina, where he looked good. Like I said, team captain as well. So
Yeah.
at the linebacking spot. Where he did good, like I said, 82 tackles all in all, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Um, and also, he's just a hard worker, Brian. Because when I was reading up on him, when he was at Charlotte, right, he was working hard. He's actually doing DoorDash deliveries in between games and everything like that, just to help support the family. So definitely someone who's gonna, not afraid to get, put his nose to the grindstone and work hard. He's coming in 6'2", 245, but we've kind of seen linebackers, at least in this kind of more modern era, be a little bit leaner at the linebacking position. A lot more lighter on their feet, not so much heavy hitters. But I mean, Demetrius Knight has some good arms to him. He's very well built, and I think that, like I said, just a smart dude. ACC academic honor roll from 19 to 21. He's also, like I say, he played at South Carolina as a graduate. He didn't even have to focus on the books.
Yeah.
So he honestly, hey, if you can get into Georgia Tech with your stuff in the classroom, you're doing something well, obviously, and so I think that he got that taken care of. And he focused just on ball at South Carolina. He did well.
Yeah.
He's got just really good explosion. I mean, just great speed. All in all, that good first step, as you see, good blitzing, just kind of packages. He knows where to go. He's got a nose for the ball. And he's actually, like I said, he's still learning, right? He's still kind of learning this position. What, 6 years into college football? But I think he's a solid zone defender, right? Man to man, if you ever have to line up man to man, it might not be the prettiest, but if you keep him in some zone packages, then I'm not saying he's a lockdown by any means, but he can still keep toe for toe with the receivers and the tight ends out there. But Brian, what are some of the accolades or some of the attributes that you enjoy watching with Demetrius Knight Jr. here?
I mean, he's got really good closing speed. Like his ability to get to the football is very, very good. He likes tackling and sticking his nose, in with all the big guys at the line of scrimmage, which is kind of weird to think of as a quarterback. Like, hey, quarterback background, I kind of want to avoid that as much as possible. Let's get away from these guys. But he was able to flip his mindset. I think that kind of helps him a little bit being a former quarterback, because he's kind of on the other side of his like, okay, what if I'm a quarterback? What am I seeing that we're doing here, and how am I going to try to counter that, and how am I trying to offset what I'm trying to do to the quarterback? And I think it's the chess game that you play. It's that's what football is. Half of it is just the chess part of it. But I think he plays through the whistle. He'll hunt the football. He's not afraid to go sideline to sideline. He'll go in between the gaps. He'll stop guys at the line of scrimmage. It's almost like he loves the contact. He'll embrace it. If you watch a lot of film, I think he had a good game against Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken, where he's going, sideline to sideline. I think his biggest issue, though, is his age, being 25, because he's been in college football for a long time. And a lot of teams are going to be kind of hesitant there, because if I'm going to invest a higher round pick on a guy, I'd like him to be, 22, 23. It's his credit, though. I mean, he had to learn a whole new position at the collegiate level. Georgia Tech just kind of flipped him and said, hey, can you play defense? And then he kind of left and said, I don't know if I'm good enough to play here, or maybe I don't have a great opportunity. Let me transfer out. And then he did well. Then he transfers to South Carolina. He does well again. I mean, he's played well at the position enough to where we're talking about him right now as a prospect, and teams are talking about him as a potential, probably a later round pick. But I mean, he's got the accolades. He's got the speed. He's got the strength. He's got the know-it-all. Like, he graduated from Georgia Tech. Very smart guy. So I think he's got all the intangibles. It's just going to be when you lace him up and when you start going against NFL caliber guys, especially the breed of running backs that we have now. Can he compete? Can he hang with them?
Yeah, that's kind of the big question. I think he's going to be a later pick. I don't know. I'm not predicting any rounds or anything like that, but someone who, I think that teams will kind of take a flyer on and say, okay, this guy's interesting. He's a smart guy. He has shown some good potential across multiple schools throughout college football. He said he's a little bit older, so there's going to be a kind of a mark on him. But I think, if you take him later in the rounds and just kind of see what you get, and you throw him out there at the practice squad or in training camp, and just see how he can compete early on. He might not start off as a starter or even get a whole lot of playing time, but he could be someone who, say if there maybe is an injury early on to one of your middle linebackers or anything along that I think he's a guy who could slide in there and could compete and could really help out. And it might take a little bit of luck for him to, get on the field early on in his career. But, I think that if he kind of sticks to it and if he sees it out, like we saw throughout his roller coaster college football career, which I think that it would also translate to the NFL. But I like Demetrius Knight. I think he's an interesting prospect for sure. Someone I'm going to keep an eye on to see where he ends up going, and seeing, what coach, what defensive coach, what defensive coordinator, what linebacker coach is going to get him. Because if you can get someone who's super experienced, right, someone who's got 20 years in the game or even longer, or anything along those lines, that I think they could really help this guy out. Because like I said, he's still learning the position in a sense. Hasn't, it's not like he's one of these guys who, it's a wide receiver. He's played it all since Pop Warner and everything. But I think that obviously he's a quick learner. And wherever he goes from the NFL, I think that he'll take to it. And I'm excited to see, the chances he gets and how often we could see him on the playing field. But Brian, what are your final thoughts here on Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker out of South Carolina, before we wrap up the show today?
Well, the Kuipers and the McShays have him as their third or fourth guy at the position, which is that's a pretty big deal, even at his age, even at everything. And they take all that into account. He's still the third or fourth guy on the board at his position. So, I mean, why not take a risk? He can play. I mean, he's playing South Carolina. He's put up good numbers in the SEC, playing probably one of the harder positions to play in the SEC as linebacker, to be able to deal with all these quarterbacks and all these speedy guys you got just flying around the field. I mean, I like him as a prospect. I think he's phenomenal. And I think if he was 22 or 23 years old, we wouldn't really even be having this conversation about him being a later round pick. I think he'd be earlier. I think he'd be a lock for that. I think he could be a steal later on, depending on how far he drops. I mean, if nothing else, he's already shown he could do multiple things. I mean, he adapted really well. It's like, hey, quarterback, linebacker, can you do scout team stuff for me? Can you, nose to the grindstone kind of stuff, which is what he did. You said that earlier. Can you work hard? Can you wait your turn? Can you produce at anything we ask you to do? And if you can do that, they're going to find a home for you.
Yep, and I'm excited to see where he goes because, I mean, you can throw him on special teams, why not? Yeah. And I'm sure he'd pick up to it. So I think this is a very interesting prospect, kind of a gadget play you can throw in here. But like I said, if there's ever a situation where all of your quarterbacks have the flu and they're not able to suit up, you don't need to go sign someone off free agency. You just have Demetrius get a couple of throws in, and he can go back to his high school days and early Georgia Tech playing career. So we'll see where it goes. But let's get this far, our draft prospect episode on Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker out of South Carolina. If you guys enjoyed the episode, like, follow, share, and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. And go download the podcast each and every single week. For Brian LaBelle, I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Until next time, we'll see you again on